Rogue Moon by Algis Budrys. So this book was copyright 1960, and I have this Avon edition here. And this is the first book I've read from Algis Budrys. This is a book that you'll see on all kinds of lists. It was critically acclaimed. It's a kind of a landmark novel. It was nominated for 1961 Hugo, but lost to A Canticle for Leibowitz by Walter M. Miller Jr. But lately I've heard a lot of mixed things. I've had some comments warning me about this book. And after finishing it, I can understand some of those concerns, but overall I did enjoy this book. It has this really cool science fiction concept that's kind of thrown off to the side. You barely get into some of those really interesting aspects that are brought up in this book. You may or may not even get some final resolutions in the plot on some of those aspects of it. But what this book really focuses on is these characters. And Algis Budrys wrote these really kind of over-the-top characters who are almost like caricatures of these really crazy kind of personality traits or extreme personality traits. And it's like a character study between these characters. And there's also a lot of themes and thinking and ideas going on with like kind of a cloning in a way, what that means to the person who was cloned. We'll get into that in a minute. And life and death. There's a lot of themes about that. And, you know, this whole character side can have some pros and cons to it. It was written in 1960, so you can see where I'm going with that one, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So what this book is about, this book kind of takes place around the time he wrote this, so probably in the 60s. And the space race is in full force, and it's the United States, mostly against the Russians. And when the United States was up exploring the far side of the moon, they discovered this alien artifact that was kind of like this building. And the first person that went in there, they just kind of instantly died, unexplained. And they knew that they couldn't just send people into this thing to just die. So they had to come up with another idea. And so we meet our main character. His name is Hawks, and he's kind of the project manager in charge of this joint venture mission between the United States government and this corporation. And they've developed this technology that they can take someone on Earth and scan their body, every cell, every thought, every essence and being of their body, and transport that up to the moon at the speed of light, and this receiver up on the moon can recreate their body, and you end up with like this clone of the person that's still left on Earth. And the person on Earth, they're in this like sensory deprivation chamber, and they have this telepathic link with their clone for somewhere around like 10 minutes, and this kind of slowly diminishes as time goes by. And so as soon as they do this, they send that clone in there. They've memorized the moves to make it through this labyrinth inside this alien artifact. And even just moving a certain way or tilting your head or anything can mean instant death. So each time they learn a little bit more and get a little bit further into this thing. And they're trying to figure out what this thing is, who left it there, what it means to humanity. It seems like this artifact is like 1 million years old, and there's a lot of pressure for them to figure this out because the Russians still don't know about this thing, and they want to figure this out before the rest of the world catches wind of this, because it could, you know, of course, put the United States on top as a world power for forever, depending on what kind of secrets they get out of this thing. And then there's also some internal pressures going on with the government and the corporation wanting to shut this thing down because they don't feel like they're making any progress. They've killed people, and even when these clones go in and die, the people that are left on Earth, they experience this death. And in every case, it kind of drives these people insane. So they get like one shot to send someone in, and then they're left with this kind of vegetable or this person that's just lost their mind. And this is really weighing on our main character, Hawks. He feels responsible for the deaths and all these people that are under his charge. And so he has another co-worker named Connington, and this guy's a people person, and he takes upon himself, he's going to find the right candidate to send in to do this that doesn't go crazy when he experiences his own death. So he finds this over-the-top playboy, thrill-seeker guy who, lives in this playboy mansion. He's got this girlfriend who is very manipulative. She uses her sexuality to create drama and conflict and get all the men around her to compete to see who's the biggest man. And so far, this guy Barker, who's this playboy, he's been the successful biggest man so far. So Claire has stuck with him. That's kind of the relationship with these two. But Connington, the guy who's setting him up, he's interested in Claire. There's a lot of weird stuff going on there. But he ends up setting up Hawks, the project manager, with Barker, our playboy. And Barker, he just needs to be dared or almost just have a challenge in front of him. And he instantly accepts this challenge. Even before Hawks can completely explain what's going to be going on here, he says, yep, I'm in. And he goes and they go down to the place where this takes place, where they're going to scan him. And they explain more and more to him. He starts to get a little bit of cold feet, but decides to go through it anyways. They project him up to the moon. His clone makes it further than anyone had ever made it before. And when his clone dies, he is bothered by it. The original copy back on Earth of Barker, he's troubled by it, but he doesn't go mad. He doesn't go insane. And he wakes up the next day ready to do this again. He goes through this process over and over, trying to make it to the end of whatever this labyrinth is to find out what this artifact is about. And that's kind of the main plot of this one. But while reading it, you're mainly going to get these interpersonal relationship issues and all these character studies between all these different characters. Later on, there's another love interest that comes in for Hawks. It doesn't seem like it fits completely, but there's this girl who shows up, and I think it's just there to give Hawks maybe something else to strive for or to be a good person. It felt a little thrown in, but there was that aspect kind of thrown in there at the same time. All this other stuff is going on. Now, there's also a lot of themes about this cloning process, this copy of the people that are made up on the moon. What does that really mean? Is that really a person up there? Or, what is the difference between the original person and them? And is it ethical to send those clones into their death over and over? So there's some themes there gone over. And then this whole death process. Every time this happens inside this artifact, there's a lot of stuff going on there. You don't spend a lot of time reading about this, but it's implied into the characters of what this means. Is this something that they're meant to do, to grow as a species? Is this part of the test? There's some interesting things going on that side of the story too. So this is it's an odd book. I think if you put this in the right context of when it came out in 1960 and what Algis Budrys was doing with this kind of introspective look at people, and it's almost like a precursor or the startings of what was going to happen later in the new wave. And I can see why it's kind of a landmark and why it was so critically acclaimed, but there are some definitely issues with it, with some of these characters, especially Claire, some of the stuff she's doing, the way the men are treating her. There's some issues that some modern readers could definitely have with this one. And, you know, I looked at it and I'm kind of like scratching my head, just like, this is just, he's laying it on way too thick. These characters are too over the top. That was the main thing that kind of bothered me with that side of the novel. But overall, I did enjoy this one. It's probably like a 4-star for me, but it's one that I probably wouldn't recommend to everyone for the reasons I mentioned earlier. So, you know, that's it for that one. Next up, I'm going to be reading Mechasm by John T. Sladek. So just look for that one coming out next. And once again, thanks for watching.